If I told you that sometimes being the last choice can turn out to be the biggest blessing of your life, would you believe me? Stay with me until the very end of this story, because the way it unfolds will not only surprise you, but it might just change the way you see yourself. And if you believe in stories that prove kindness, honesty, and courage can change a person's life, then make sure you like this video and subscribe to Everyday Grace Stories, because this one will stay in your heart for a long time. The rain hadn't stopped all week. It poured endlessly, painting the city in dull shades of gray, and for Anna, it felt like the sky was crying with her. Each drop against her umbrella echoed the weight of her own worries. She had been to 7 job interviews in the last 2 months, each one ending with the same rehearsed smile from the interviewer and that dreaded phrase, "We'll be in touch." But they never were. Not once. She wasn't unqualified. In fact, she had given years of her life to a small company, building trust, learning every detail of her work, and carrying responsibilities that went far beyond her job description. But one day, without warning, budget cuts swallowed her position whole. The polite words in the letter had said she was no longer necessary, but the truth was much simpler and much colder: she had been replaced by someone cheaper. Now she found herself in a crowded reception area for yet another interview, her 8th since losing her job. The company was hiring for an assistant position, and just by looking around, she could tell she was surrounded by competition that looked far more polished. Some of the candidates were chatting confidently with each other, their sleek suits and designer handbags making them seem as though they already belonged in an office like this. Anna, in her plain but clean navy dress and worn black shoes, felt like a dull pebble among shining diamonds. Her hair was tied neatly back, her resume neatly printed, but she knew she had no glamorous degree to flaunt, no influential contacts to drop into conversation. She had only her years of experience, her relentless work ethic, and the stubborn determination not to give up, no matter how many polite rejections she had to endure. When her name was finally called, she took a deep breath and walked into the interview room. 3 people sat behind a sleek, polished table. The man in the center, Mr. Hayes, the department head, had an expression that seemed to measure and categorize everything within seconds. His eyes flicked over her resume, and Anna could almost hear the silent conclusion forming in his mind: not the top choice. The questions began in the usual way. Skills, past responsibilities, reasons for leaving her previous job. Anna answered them as best she could, keeping her voice steady, but she could feel the invisible wall between herself and the panel. She had been in this position enough times to recognize the signs. They were polite, but their interest was lukewarm. They had likely already met their preferred candidates. This was just procedure. And then came the question she had been dreading, the one that always felt like a trap. "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" one of the women asked, smiling in that carefully professional way. Anna knew exactly what they expected her to say. She could paint a neat little picture about her career trajectory, about climbing the corporate ladder and contributing to the company's growth. But the truth rose in her chest before she could stop it. "Honestly," she began, surprising even herself, "I don't know. I can't tell you exactly where I'll be in 5 years. But I can tell you what matters to me. I want to be somewhere I feel valued, where the work I do matters. I'm not here to tell you what I think you want to hear. I'm here because I work hard, I care about people, and I believe in doing the right thing, even when no one's watching." That's not the fanciest answer you'll hear today, but it's the truth. Silence filled the room. For the first time since she walked in, Mr. Hayes lifted his eyes from the paper and actually looked at her, not scanning, not judging, but really seeing her. Anna didn't fidget under his gaze. She had said what she meant, and for once, she wasn't afraid of how it landed. When the interview ended, Anna walked out without any illusions. She knew how these things worked. She wasn't the first choice. She probably wasn't even the second or third. But for the first time in a long time, she felt strangely calm. She hadn't played a role or worn a mask. She had been herself, honest, unpolished, but real. Days passed without a word. She applied to other places, tried to keep her hope alive. Then, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, her phone rang. "Anna? This is Mr. Hayes from the interview last week. The position we were filling, you weren't our first choice." Her stomach tightened. She braced herself for the polite rejection. "But," he continued, "our first choice, and then our second, didn't work out. We remembered your honesty. We need someone we can trust. Can you start Monday?" Anna sat frozen, the words sinking in slowly. She had been the last choice, the backup plan. And yet, she had the job. When she started, she kept her expectations low. She wasn't looking for a dream, just stability. But over the weeks, something began to happen. She noticed little things in the office that others overlooked: errors in reports, missing details in schedules, small gaps in communication. She fixed them quietly, not for praise, but because it was the right thing to do. She spoke up in meetings when she saw an idea that could be improved, even if it meant disagreeing respectfully with higher-ups. She stayed late when a colleague was drowning in work, not because it was required, but because she knew how it felt to struggle alone. Her honesty, the same quality that had almost cost her the job, started to ripple through the team. People began coming to her for advice, knowing she'd give them the truth without sugarcoating. Mr. Hayes, who at first kept a professional distance, started asking for her input on decisions. She was no longer just the assistant, she had become the person people trusted. Months turned into a year, and then one day, Mr. Hayes called her into his office. He told her about an opening for a managerial position. It was higher pay, greater responsibility, and it would mean overseeing people who once thought of her as the new girl. Anna hesitated. She remembered all the times she had felt invisible, the way her confidence had been chipped away by rejection. Could she really do this? Mr. Hayes must have read her thoughts. "Anna," he said, "when we first met, you weren't our first choice. But you've proven something far more important than experience or perfect credentials. You've proven that you're honest, reliable, and committed. That's what we need in a leader. You've already been doing half this job without the title. It's time you had both." That day, Anna accepted the role. Looking back, she realized that being the last choice had given her something priceless. It had freed her from the pressure to be perfect. She had walked into that interview with nothing to lose, and because of that, she had told the truth. That truth had built trust, and that trust had built her future. Life has a way of making us believe that we have to be the first pick to matter, that worth is measured by how quickly others choose us. But Anna's story proves something different. Sometimes, being the last choice forces you to show who you really are, and that's exactly what makes you unforgettable. So if you've ever felt overlooked, left behind, or like you were only chosen because no one else was available, remember this: your position on someone's list doesn't define your value. What you do after you're chosen, and the honesty you carry into that role, can change everything. And if this story touched you, if it reminded you that your honesty is your greatest strength, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Everyday Grace Stories. Because sometimes, the last choice is exactly where you're meant to be.